Hi and welcome. You know me, astrologer Penny Dix, and with me today in conversation for a rather interesting topic, which we've called Why Saturn is the Best Thing That Ever Happened to You. I have the lovely and incredibly experienced astrologer, Alex Trenoweth. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you.
Can I just tell everybody a little bit about how what I have found out about you from my research? And then you can tell me your bits. But you're an author, you're a teacher, you're a school teacher, aren't you? You teach little kids. What ages do you teach?
I teach everything. I teach
Oh,
all the
goodness.
way from the ages of 3 years old all the way up to 18 across all subjects. I taught music, history, English, and lots of other things in between.
Yeah.
I'm just one of these all-rounders. Thank you for
Uh-huh.
my Gemini rising universe.
Uh-huh. And I think what's interesting is you're probably the only person, the only teacher out there and astrologer who combines astrology with education and child development. Is that true?
I don't know of any other teacher who is an astrologer. And when we were talking before, I was saying, astrology is naturally that extracurricular all-rounder
Yes.
topic
Yes.
involving maths,
Yeah.
science, and history, and religious education. So it's one of these topics that really you can squeeze it in wherever you go, and I do squeeze it in
Oh, wonderful.
wherever I can.
That's
Although
great.
we don't have an astrology topic, I can still talk about the phases of the moon in a way that most
Absolutely.
science teachers can't, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I think that's what I'm picking up from the research I've done with your work is that you're very tuned into the cycles of the planets. And I also want to mention that you do lecture internationally. You run courses through the academy you set up called the Rohini Academy of Astrology. Well done. And I love the name. I'll ask you about that in a minute. And you've also got an MA in Cultural Astronomy and Astrology at Bath Spa University. Is that how you met Steve Judd?
no, I met Steve Judd before. We
Oh,
used to go to festivals. He used to manage the Big Green Gathering, and when my
okay.
children were small, we were festival. We were a festival family. We just moved from Rainbow Circle to the Big Green to Glastonbury, and we spent the whole summer traveling from tent to tent.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
so that yes, it was a wonderful summers with my children. But that's where I met Steve Judd on a field
Oh,
in Rainbow Circle.
fabulous. I spoke to him last week and he sends his love.
Oh, yes, and I spoke to him a couple of days ago too, and yeah,
Yeah, because I told him
back to
we're
you.
meeting today and going to do this chat. And I also see that you did a diploma from the Faculty of Astrological Studies.
I
And
did.
uh-huh, uh-huh. Do you want to say
I,
anything
I,
about that?
y- I do. I just want to say that, I think the faculty is the best place to study. Um, they also are involved with Oxford University. They do summer school there, and it was at a great. It was an investment for me. Let's just say I was a single parent. They are expensive courses, but I stuck with it,
Yeah.
and their exams are difficult, and not everybody passes the first time around, and I didn't. I
Mhm.
stuck with it. Now, when I started working with ISAR, I did their exam without studying, and I passed it without doing any revision. And so I fully credit the Faculty of Astrological Studies for training me so well.
Brilliant,
So
brilliant.
I think they
Yes,
are
I've
the
always
best.
heard. Yes, I've always heard good things about them. And I see you have an honorary PhD from the Krishnamurti Institute of Astrology for research on adolescent behavior and lunar phases. And you were awarded International Astrologer of the Year and
Yeah,
later
twice actually.
Outstanding Service to Astrology. I
I
am
did. No,
overawed.
no, my honorary PhD. No, it's an actual because people ask me about this. Oh, they just give away awards in India. Well, that's news to me because
Mhm.
my paper was a research paper, and
Mhm.
maybe we'll talk a bit about this. But it's based on my uh, quantitative research into do children misbehave more in the new moon or the full moon, and I have 30,000 data entries for that, and I can answer that question because I did my honorary PhD with them. Now, the reason why it's honorary and not an actual PhD is because I wasn't matriculated. I wasn't living in India when I
Right.
did it. So I submitted my 80,000 word paper on this topic. And so it really is a research paper. And, it was accepted by the university over in Calcutta. So it really is a research paper. I've done work with ISAR as well on this topic. But, I did get International Astrologer of the Year. That put me on the map because nobody had heard of Alex Chenoweth before. And then suddenly I was International Astrologer of the Year. And then 2016, I was given sort of this sort of exalted position, which is really inviting Western astrologers for the 2018 conference, which, oh my God, nearly finished me off. Well, we had 75 international speakers, and it was an incredible event. And I just love seeing that so many people are still friends and still talking and bring up their memories of this event. It was a great, wonderful experience, but it was exhausting.
Wow. And how have you found time to write at least three books? One is Growing Pains, one Mirror Mirror, Astrology and Actors Biopics, and Zeus on the Loose, which again is an awesome title, which is about Jupiter cycles and learning.
I've always I always knew I was going to be a writer.
Mhm.
Kind of like I always knew I was going to be a teacher. I had these things, I've always been kind of good with words, good
Mm.
with writing, and it doesn't hurt me to write. Some people I know I understand it hurts them to write or to look at a blank piece of paper. That doesn't bother me at all. I have a lot to say and a lot to talk about. Um, so I wrote Growing Pains, my first book. I was teaching full time, so I would basically write it at the weekends. But it was all in my head what I wanted to say because I had been observing children and how they learn for a whole Jupiter cycle by that time. And in fact, when the book did come out, the first thing my head teacher said is, she acted like, where do you find the time to write this book as if my whole entire life should be devoted to teaching. And it's just the way I manage my time, good old Saturn, and setting myself goals and targets and working within the confinements that I have in my life, raising children,
Mm.
all those sort of things. And that's it.
Yeah,
Barbara Streisand said it best. Someone asked her how she can hold a note for so long, and she says, because I want to. And I would say the same thing. Why do I write so much? Because I want to.
I love it. I also love Barbara Streisand. She's one of my heroes or heroines as a vocalist. I used to know every
Yes.
single song she'd done. And of course, she's a Taurus like me. So, and I sing as well. So there's the vocal side of that. But I think it would be good to just tell everybody about Shifts Happen Too, because that's coming soon. And we do need to just plug that for you, Steve, Penny, Rick, and Darby Costello. So when
How
is it?
marvelous
Yes, I
is
am
it?
going to be there.
How wonderful is it that we have Darby Costello coming?
Uh-huh.
Um, Now I'm going to come back to the first Shifts Happens, which was last year, and I'm going to say that um, I try not to say something is better than something else, but I will say that Shifts Happens was the best astrology event I've ever been to. Now, I've
Oh,
been to astrology events all over the world,
mm,
and some were very, very, very good. South Africa and in India, and there are others that I thought were extremely good. But I'm just going to call it and say that Shifts Happens last year changed my life
wow.
in lots of different ways. And what I love about Shifts Happens is there is no high table where, the president and the vice
Mm,
president sit and they
mm.
hold court. It is, we are moving around, we're talking to people. Um,
A group of astrologers.
Steve,
A group of
yeah,
astrologers.
Steve, yep, Steve, Rick, and I are not those kind of people that, are trying to pretend we're better than anybody else. We want to talk to people and talk about astrology. And I think for me, that's what made the event.
And I think that's what makes it easier for astrologers like myself to feel I can approach people like you or Penny or Steve and say, would you like to come on my channel and have a chat about astrology? Because, with some of the sort of, as you say, the hierarchy, I feel they would just kind of go, oh, my dear, I don't know who you are.
No, we're not. We're none
I
of us.
know.
We're not like that.
I know. So shifts happen too. I'm coming to, and it's from I think it's the 15th, isn't it?
Yes.
15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th.
And then they're doing a tour
And the,
as well
the
of
Avebury, the
Avebury.
Avebury tour, which I'm going on as well, which will be fabulous. Yes.
Yay!
And my birthday is on the 16th of May.
Oh, and
So
you have Sun and Algol, right?
yeah, you noticed.
Immediately.
Yeah. And I've just had Uranus finishing with me, hence all my plans
Yes.
to move back to the UK this year and all of that. But
And so is the royal family had the Algol.
I read your article, and that is a fascinating article. Oh my goodness, there's so much to talk about, and we've got to try and squeeze it into a sort of suitable hour-ish. But are there any other? First of all, I'll just tell everyone I will put a link for. It's probably best to put a link for Steve's website for the shifts happen, isn't it? For the booking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put a link to Steve's.
Yeah, and I think if you're a member, you still get early bird discounts.
Yes, I
So
believe so. I
it's good
think
to put it.
he put a post on Facebook saying there were just a few more days when that would be available. And I think there are still some rooms left at the hotel, so residential.
It's a beautiful hotel, by the way.
Right.
You go to some hotels, especially in England, where the food is rubbish and
Uh-huh,
the rooms are not very nice. But
uh-huh.
I assure you that someone who's traveled around the world,
Oh,
the hotel is nice. The food is beautiful. It's vegetarian, beautiful food. And you're talking to someone who eats school dinners every single day. It's not like school dinners, and
right,
like you get at some other.
right.
Um, you know,
Slop and
England
some
is not known.
potatoes and some boiled
England,
carrots.
England is not known for its cuisine, but
No,
the food is
no.
wonderful.
Brilliant, brilliant. I'm really looking forward to it. So
Me
that's
too.
so I'm actually leaving on what am I leaving on? The 14th. I think I arrive on the 14th. So
I think I
I'm
do
coming
too.
in from Malta, so I want a night to recover before everything starts.
Absolutely.
So, and have you got any other events coming up that you want to just let everyone know about before we launch into the astrology?
Well, I do have something coming up in my own school. Now, I teach kind of like I don't know how an add-on. If you're a professional astrologer and you're interested in working with children's charts, I do like a higher education level of working with children's charts and teaching about child protection. If you feel called, I do think you have to feel called to work with children's charts
Yeah.
about how to keep your practice safe. But I've started that. You can still come if you want to. I can
Mhm.
add you in, but I'm particularly appealing to Australians because I opened up a tier just for the Australians to suit their time zones, which is very early on a Saturday morning for me. So I'm
Mm.
giving up my day off for
Oh
the
my
Australians,
goodness.
10 a.m. UK time. So it's not too early, not too late for the Australians, and we can add that link in. But I think it's something that astrologers should be. It should be something that's automatically um, inserted into all the curriculums across astrology schools about child protection,
Yeah.
because there is this big question: should we read children's charts? And I think the answer is yes, but with very careful precautions around that.
There's a huge responsibility because I think this is where the difficulty comes, and I'm sure you've come across this with people where there are some people who still see astrology as being some kind of predicting the future. And of course, it's far more complex than that. And even though you can get a sense of and forecast certain trends, it isn't actually about predicting the future. But I can remember going back to when I was much younger and not with astrology, but I remember going to see a tarot card reader. And actually, that didn't do me much good at all because it influenced me so much that I think it actually colored certain decisions I made through my teens and 20s because they were held in but that's what's going to happen, rather than actually just letting everything evolve organically. So, I think there is a huge responsibility in how one presents astrology to the younger generation. And I think we need more people like yourself who are going to take that mantle up, if you like, and actually train others to look at how we do this in a responsible way. So, I think it's a great way forward for astrology.
I think so too. And one thing I'm very thankful about is that I never went down the road of sun sign astrology in terms of writing a big column, because people will ask you, what paper do you write for?
Yes, yes.
And
What's happening to you today?
yeah, what's in it for Sagittarians today or whatever.
Yeah.
And that is not the way I've ever worked. Although I have written sun sign astrology, just to give me an idea of how hard sun sign astrologers work, and I'm not doubting their
Just,
hard work.
yeah, yeah.
It's to me, and it's just my opinion again.
Mm,
It's laborious, boring. What
I
are you going to
agree.
do with that column at the end of the day? It's going to go into the rubbish bin,
I know.
and all that work you put into, and I'm glad practicing astrologers are writing them. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying I'm glad I don't have to think about my work going into the bin at the end of the day. My work is evergreen, and
Yes,
that's what I think about when I write articles. Evergreen.
that's beautiful. Barbara Streisand, nice song.
Ah, yes.
And it's interesting because I have tried writing sun sign astrology. I did it for a while, and like you say, I found it laborious and boring. And when I first started my YouTube channel, I was doing the monthly zodiac signs every month, which of course people love. Oh my God, I'm afraid, and I'm sorry, everyone who's watching that wants me to do them. I'm not. It is very hard work and very boring. And I will do the annual. So I do the, forecast for Scorpio for 2026. And that is hard work. Doing the yearly forecast is, I don't think people realize how much work goes into it.
They don't, and they think we're making it well, because we do have imitators in our field,
Yeah.
who take our stuff and run away with it, and there's not a whole lot we can do with it. I was mortified to find my work had been copied and translated into a different language,
Oh
and
my,
I only came across it just by accident. Someone said, "Oh, do you realize your your work is in I
yeah.
can't remember what language it was, a European language," and I was like, "That's word for word.
Shit.
Somebody's taken my work, translated it in probably using AI, and put it on their website, claimed it as their own."
Yeah.
It was on actually on my Gone with the Wind work, which is really old, like
Oh,
25 years ago.
wow.
And it's shocking. So it happens. We do so much work. To us,
Yeah.
I'm going to say us real astrologers do
Yes.
so much work and research, and I think we have the talent for making it look easy when it's not
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
easy as we make it look.
Yeah, yeah. Certainly, I've had my YouTube channel cloned, and several sort of followers had alerted me to it. And
Yeah,
it's just like, oh God, because they're trying to piggy bank on your success, basically.
absolutely.
And it's just about money. But listen, did you know
Yeah.
today is International Women's Day?
Hallelujah,
I know.
for us
I
women,
thought,
for the
and,
things that we
and
do and what we can do, and um, hallelujah for us women.
And I also think it's rather lovely that we have a grand water trine today between the moon in Scorpio, the sun conjunct Pisces, sorry, the sun conjunct Mercury in Pisces, and Jupiter retrograde, soon to go direct, in Cancer. So that feels like nice empathic energy for us to have this discussion about Saturn. But I'm curious before we dive into that as to what brought you into astrology in the very beginning and how old were you?
I'm going to have to give my mom some credit. She must have been reading a daily newspaper or a special something article on astrology, and
Mhm.
she told me that I was a Cancer. Now, the word itself, Cancer, is a little bit frightening.
Yes.
And the description was home loving and shy. Are you kidding me? home loving and shy. So I thought, well, and of course, my mom being a Sagittarius, she was adventurous and lively. And I was like, really? So I guess
Uh-huh.
astrology is a load of rubbish. And so my birthday's July 20th. So whenever somebody asked me what my sign was, I'd never own up to being a Cancer. I'd always say, on the cusp of Leo. And I kind of looked up to Leos. I love their energy. I love their confidence. And I didn't realize that I was probably living out my moon in Leo. So when a friend of mine in university asked me if I was a Leo, just to be arsy, I said, no, I'm a Cancer. And she said something that changed my life. You must have the moon in Leo. And so she did my chart, a very rudimentary chart. And she, to me, it looked like some sort of magical incantation. And I thought it was so clever for the, way she looked up in the ephemeris, way she did it. This is before we had,
The computer programs.
yes. And, so she did it manually with
Yeah.
the thick old ephemeris.
Mm.
And she says, yeah, you got the moon in Leo. And if I done my calculations correctly, you have your Gemini rising, which means your ruling planet is Mercury, which is also in Leo. It's angular, and it's retrograde, which maybe we could talk about too. But I had a lot of Mercury energy in my chart and a lot of Leo energy in my chart, and it made perfect sense to me, and that set me off into studying astrology. I moved to England. It was because I thought to myself, if I don't go to England now, I will probably make decisions that would mean that I'd never get to come to England. And I've always loved London. And so that's what I did. I jumped at the right time and I came to England and I studied with the Faculty of Astrological Studies.
Fabulous. Love it.
Yeah, it is
I
rather
love
cool.
finding out how people or how astrology finds one, because it's just a fascinating topic. But you mentioned Mercury, and I think it's interesting that I don't know which one of us was, and it doesn't really matter, but we got the times all muddled up this morning with our meeting. And I think because I'm operating on Central European time, I was thinking my midday, and I probably said midday to you. And then, of course, actually, I don't even know what it is anymore.
Yeah, I think it's that time of year when I wish we'd all get ourselves together and decide what weekend we're going to do our time zone changes, because it's different for Europe, it's different for Australia, it's different for the United States. And I'm having this problem with because I work internationally, I get it wrong a lot. And I don't blame Mercury retrograde for anything. I just think it's just that the system itself is very confusing. And yeah, anyway, here we are. We're still
Here we
here.
are. And shall we, Saturn has been sort of standing in the wings, the dweller on the threshold, holding us back before we give Saturn her proper introduction. Because I always find that interesting, that a lot of people think of Saturn as a masculine energy. And I'm interested to find out what you think, because I was taught by my astrology teacher that Saturn is a feminine energy. So I don't know what.
I think we're getting into quite an awkward discussion when we talk about genders, because I've had gender identity problems when I was growing up. Obviously, I've chosen the feminine path, but there is I think that we shouldn't get too caught up in calling a planet masculine or feminine. I come from an Ojibwe background, and we never call the great spirit he or she. It's always the great spirit. We don't give it a pronoun. But we get ourselves bogged down into that kind of identity thing. So I wouldn't try to go either side.
I understand that. I respect that. I think it's just there feels to me to be a collective feeling that Saturn is masculine father.
Yeah, that I agree with. Yeah,
I kind of feel that, so that when I was taught, oh no, actually Saturn is feminine, and I thought, but that doesn't actually also fit in with the mythology, because Kronos was not feminine. Kronos, the god of time, I think, as far as I'm concerned, was masculine. So it's just an interesting observation, this sort of these things we can debate about Saturn. But Saturn, I think, has often had a very bad reputation in
Absolutely.
astrology. I think we can feel quite, what's the word, a sort of quite, can't think of the right word, but intimidated, that's it. Intimidated by the thought of a Saturn transit coming into our lives. And that's what I'd like us to get into talking about, because in my experience, and I'm sure we'll find out with your experience as well, my Saturn transits have probably been my biggest teachers, and they've changed my life. And even though I haven't always listened to what I now can see with hindsight, Saturn was trying to encourage me to work with. Now I can see at the grand old age of 70 that actually Saturn's been my friend all the time and has been going, no, 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 we don't want to go down that path. So I'm going to have to break your ankle. So you don't go down that path. So you sit still and think about this. So, that's just a little taster of how Saturn has affected me. So what's your view on the cycles of Saturn? That's a very loaded question.
Yeah, I also think that Saturn is our friend. Now, because I'm an educator, a teacher, a real school teacher,
Hmm.
one argument I often have with parents is the topic of taking exams. And I am a supporter of the exam system. And I know that might be controversial to some people because, oh, it stresses out our children. Yeah, it's stressful. That's what exams are. They're stressful. But I think our job as teachers and parents is to help our children manage stress because life is not stress free.
Yeah.
Whatever you do in life, you are going to be examined for something by the doctor, by a banker, by a lawyer,
Mm.
whatever, you name it. You're going to be examined in some way for all your life, and you need to learn how to deal with that stress.
Mm.
And I am sorry that there are children who can't manage that, but we have to support them as people who've gone through the Saturn cycles ourselves.
Yeah.
Now, my first Saturn return was barely a blip. I really don't remember anything Saturn taught, other than that I was, a mom, and I had, a career, and I had things to take care of. But I've lived through my second Saturn return. In fact, I've just finished it,
Mm.
and what I find, of course, being an older woman now,
Yes.
I can claim that. I can claim
Yes.
that now. I'm an older
Your
woman. I'm a
maturity.
mature woman. I can claim it. Now, I wasn't happy when I got invited to the senior citizens coffee.
Or offered your bus pass.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to the bus pass,
Yeah, because
but
that doesn't come till
being
60, I don't
invited,
think, does it?
being invited to the senior citizens coffee did kind of get
Yeah.
to me. But
Yeah.
I'm my mom is 80 now and 80, and my sister and I used to joke, 10 years ago, when we get to be senior citizens, we're going to go for the cake and the free, whatever it
Yeah.
is. But
Yeah.
when it happened to me, actually, I did feel a little bit of, I am not that old.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
now that I've gotten time to claim it and to get used to it, I'm okay with it now. Now
Yeah.
I will go to senior citizen cup. I will claim my freedom pass. I will wear my hair up in a very crisp bun. I will be
Yeah.
fine about getting older, but it was a bit difficult to get used to. Um, but I'm good with it now.
Yeah. It's funny because in Malta, it's quite a different attitude to age. In fact, it's worse, I think, than how it is in the UK, because basically, once you get really past 55, and certainly at 60, you are termed this elderly lady. And it's done with that kind of reverence in the tone, so that my doctor, if he's writing a letter for me to take to a consultant, will say, dear Dr. So and so, I have this elderly lady, Penny Dix. And I'm going, elderly lady? What on earth? And it makes it the vibration of the words take my energy away, if that makes sense. It actually seems to compound it. It makes me feel. And so, and it's been quite hard to put across to the people here in Malta, because really I should be sitting at home knitting for the grandchildren, which I don't have because I don't have any children. So I don't have any grandchildren. And they can't get their head around the fact that I run an online business. That's just too difficult. One of the reasons why I decided, no, I've got to go back to the UK because I need to be doing this in the UK. And Saturn has been very helpful with all of that. And I think, as I say, I think as I'm getting older, and, I think 70 was a really big one and it really hit me hard. It was very, very tough because there's something about 70 that is because your body's starting to tell you you're 70 as well, much more so than when you're 60.
My knees are telling me I'm 60.
Oh, that's horrible. I know. I know. And I think what's interesting is that I've noticed that my sense of being an adult, so very Saturnian, or a grown up or mature, has really shifted since I reached 70. So that now I really do feel, actually, you know what? I do know stuff. I do know what I'm talking about. I have done the work. I've done a lot of Saturn work. And a lot of people don't understand when we say you have to do the work. And if you do, of course, as you know, Saturn will gift you.
That's right. And I think that, of my experience of my second Saturn return is, I feel like I've graduated with honors. And sorry if that sounds conceited. I don't
No,
mean to come
it's
across that way
honest. It's honest.
because I knew it was coming. I saw it coming. I could work with it. And
Mm.
when it happened, I could claim it. And yes, I am an older woman. Yes.
Mm.
I'm also a wise woman because I've put the work in. Every bit of education I've had to fight for.
Yeah.
I come from a family that didn't appreciate education, not the way it's usually honored.
Mm.
I don't come from a family of readers. Neither of my parents graduated from high school.
Mm.
So I feel I've had to fight for every bit of my education, pay for it, and I have it. And now when I say, hey, I am the one who knows how
Yeah.
to work with children's charts, I can claim it honestly. And I think that's something that it only comes from working with Saturn. And we get this at the age of 60. I call it the second 30th. The
Oh,
second 30th.
absolutely.
You can claim it because it's yours, it's your honor. And in Indian astrology and Vedic astrology, there is a special name. I can't remember it, but in Western astrology as well, it's the fifth Jupiter return, the second Saturn return at the same time. It's the coming of wisdom. It's a celebration, and this is why when I was in Portugal, I celebrated my second Saturn return with sharing a cake with my fellow astrologers at the Portuguese Astrology Conference.
Oh, wow.
Celebrate your age.
Oh,
And then I keep celebrating it. I wrote about it in real time. It's on my website,
yeah.
alexjournal.co.uk, which you
Yeah.
can read all 10 lessons plus a bonus. And my little Chihuahua doggy from my sister,
Oh,
Tito.
yes. I will put your
He's there.
link in the description box so that people can check you out and everything. But how have you found, or how are you observing Saturn working or at work with children or students?
Well, Saturn is the great teacher, as is Jupiter. I mean, I think my job as a teacher is to hold doors open safely, so I can get open. I talk about my travels. I talk about it's only a passport when you get go traveling, enjoy the world, have a taste of the different religions and different cultures that we offer you here in education. My most repeated phrase in education is make the most of your free education. I say that all the time to my kids because it's not just about us being a babysitters, although that's how we're treated sometimes. It's
Mm.
about us making sure that our children have opportunities that maybe they might not get from their home life,
Mm.
or helping them to get ready for exams that will open up doors in their lifetime. I think it's always about holding the doors open and helping our children to learn. So any way that we can do that, I
Yeah.
think is the role of a teacher.
Mm. How much do you see the house system affecting the placement of Saturn? So for you, Saturn, I think you said, was in your 10th house. Do you feel that it does reflect more in those areas of life, or whichever part of the chart one Saturn is in, with people, say, with a second Saturn return? Or can it bring in threads from lots of other areas?
Well, that's a can of worms. Talk about health systems.
Absolutely.
Well, I've always followed the equal house system, and maybe it's to do with because, I have, my midheaven is an Aquarius, and I want to treat everything equally, and I don't like intercepted
Yeah,
houses. And
intercepted
I
housing.
like equal houses, but I gotta say,
Um,
Saturn makes you think. And now in some house systems, Saturn could be in my 11th. In the Placidus house system, it falls in the
right.
11th. In
Yeah.
the equal house system, it falls in the 10th. I've had friendship issues this year that I
With the
was
11th
shocked.
house.
Yeah.
Mm,
That I thought people that were in my life would always be in my life, and they didn't.
yeah. Yeah.
They found their own door out of my life.
Mm, mm.
Let's just leave it like
Is
that.
it that's interesting. I've had a few of those this year, but there we go.
Where I'm just like, I can do without your drama. Um,
Oh, yeah.
Out you go.
Yeah.
And so that has happened.
Thanks for the
But I
lesson.
but I still think that, for me, equal house
Mm,
is my preferred house system. Now,
yeah.
when I'm working with clients, obviously I'm going to ask some questions, if I got planets that could be one way or the other, because some people do work better with a different house system.
Mm,
There are different techniques that I would use a different house system with when I'm working with dreams. I
mhm.
use Regiomontana's house system.
Ooh, okay.
So if I'm going to do a horary, I am probably going to do Placidus.
Yeah.
Um, so there's different techniques, but I think natal astrology, I'm going to use equal house, unless there is something that the client says that makes me think, okay, that doesn't fit. Let me try another house system. Let me see if that resonates a little bit better. And again, this discernment only comes with practice and experience.
Mm. Yeah, that's very true. Can you look back on your life and see there are times when Saturn has really helped you become stronger, wiser?
Well, I'm going to say my whole entire teaching career,
Yeah.
um, because the biggest problem we have in teaching is that we lose teachers very fast. The unions say the average teacher only lasts 5 years,
Wow.
and I nearly fell into that statistic because it's a hard job, and it's only because of astrology, because understanding Jupiter cycles, we teach children by your group, and understanding that every classroom has its own Jupiter dominance. Um, that it helped me be more organized. My Saturn's in Pisces. That is my struggle in life, is being
Mm.
organized.
Yes.
My classroom really was a kind of classroom where I turned my back and everything would be
Mm.
completely in chaos. I
Wow.
had to constantly work on being organized, keeping tidy, getting the children to help me tidy, getting a routine. That was all part of my training to be a teacher, and to be a good teacher.
Mm.
I can claim that now. So that was I'm going to say Saturn was my guiding light in my teaching career, as well as my Jupiter in Cancer. I'm naturally, uh, children and cats, they always find me.
It's funny because children and cats often find me. Cats I'm good with. I've actually never been great with children, but they seem to love me. Maybe because I've never had them, and I don't have any brothers and sisters, so I don't have nieces or nephews. So, and yet, actually, when I'm around a younger person, I actually really enjoy it. But of course, I've never had them in my life much, which is just interesting. And it's obviously not the path I'm on at the moment. But I'm curious as to how do you work as a teacher with the astrology? Do you actually introduce the cycles to your students?
No, but I'm aware of the Jupiter cycles.
Right.
I know if I'm teaching 3-year-olds who are having a Jupiter square, 6-year-olds are having a transiting Jupiter opposition, 9-year-olds are having the waning square. Jupiter return children are my favorite year group to teach. They're the ones that are first entering into secondary school. So I'm aware of their cycles. And I think this is what we have to be aware of with Jupiter. A lot of schools, even the faculty, just teach, oh, here's your Jupiter sign. They don't teach the cycles.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can get meaning out
Mm.
of either Jupiter or Saturn unless you understand the cycle. So
Yeah.
Jupiter is every 3 years. For the harsh aspects, I ignore the soft aspects because the
Hmm.
harsh aspects make us choose and decide on a path. And Saturn cycles are every 7 years.
Mm.
And if you look at education, we kind of follow that, even though they're probably not aware of the astrological meaning behind it.
Mm.
At 7, we have children take their SATs. At 14, the Saturn opposition is when we get them settled into getting ready for exams that will shape the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Um, Saturn is also about teeth, about orthodontics, about losing your teeth when you're young, about getting orthodontics when you're a teenager, the
Mm.
wisdom teeth coming in, the waning Saturn square, maybe losing your teeth. Thankfully, I've never had a cavity in my life,
Mm.
but we have to,
Mm.
Saturn rules the hard parts of our body,
Mm.
skin's eye,
And I,
skin, eye, teeth.
and I do wonder whether Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus going into Gemini is going to affect the collective in how we view the whole of astrology going forward. Because I'm think what you're sort of really bringing out for me is the awareness that basically every teacher should have a knowledge of astrology because it would actually help them manage their students so much better. And I think that goes for
Well,
many
and help to manage
areas.
themselves,
Sorry?
help to manage themselves as well.
Yes. And
Because teachers
what
don't
they're
have all
observing.
the answers.
No, exactly. And I know that there are now business astrologers. So you've got astrologers who go into human resources and help with the psychology of teams, which I find fascinating. And also, of course, you've got your financial astrologers. And, these are very specialized areas, which I think if I'd gone into it younger, I would have loved to have got involved with, but it's not where I am now. Where I am now is great going forward. But I think, that the sort of the awareness I'm getting through talking to you is that also if children could somehow have a knowledge of their chart, their own astrology, their qualities, is that going to be helpful to them or not? This comes back to the argument of whether you do someone young's chart, doesn't it? And what do you
Okay,
really
so
think? Yeah.
I don't think young people really should look too much at astrology. Just think about how you and I, as experienced astrologers, think about how much we've had to know. Now,
Mm.
if you're young, you're barely able to read and write.
True. Yes.
Okay, let alone take on the huge psychological burden that is an astrology chart.
Yeah.
And while I'm happy to talk to a parent about their child's chart, unless the child really wants to engage with me about their chart, I'm going to be very careful. I'm very careful anyway what I say to a parent
Oh, yeah.
because you can't look at a child's chart and say, "Oh, they'd be a great doctor," or "They'd be a great." You're not going to say these things, but you're going to help that parent to, um, because I work mainly with families. The majority of the charts that I see, families that I see, are parents or a parent who has a 13-year-old child. The oldest child is 13.
Wow.
That's usually where the entry level is. Now, at 13 years old, a child can engage with me. They can talk to me, but I'm still not going to be talking about their future
No,
with them
no,
or making predictions. That is not what astrology
no,
is
absolutely.
anyway.
No.
But I'm going to be working with parents, about uh, how to understand that child, and I feel like I'm giving really flippant answers for a very a
Deep.
question that
No,
really deserves
yes, no, I get it. I
a
get it.
lot more attention.
Yeah.
But I want to talk to parents, about their own experience with growing up, and because I think it affects how they raise their own children.
Mm.
And also, I want to assure parents, listen, we're not perfect. We don't get it right the first time, and I know that you want to be perfect, or you don't want to admit to your failings because you want to be the parent that you didn't have when you were growing up, but
Mm.
that's not how it works. And to forgive yourself and to work on these things without I want to build parents up. It makes no sense to let parents beat themselves up because that's doing that disempowers them. It's about building up and making a better future, not about beating yourself up for the past. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
where I come from too.
Yeah. And I'm also wondering what would be an appropriate age for, say, a younger person to actually have an astrology session? Are we looking at 18, or is it really in your 20s that it's better to, leave it
Thank you
till?
for that question. I strongly advise any astrologer not to do one-to-one sessions with anyone under the age of 18.
Mm,
And, I've been called a little bit paranoid by some very big names in astrology, but all I do is look at Andrew Mountbatten. Allowed himself to be in a situation where somebody who's under the age of 18, and look what happened. And, not to take that risk. People might have done it 20 years ago, but now we need to start taking responsibility and being sure that we're not doing one-to-one consultations with anybody under the age of 18. Doesn't matter if they're 17 and 364 days. You can't go into a pub and buy a drink at that age.
no.
18 means 18. And, we have to be strict about that. And we have the birth data. So they can't get around us and try to pass off as
Yeah.
being 18.
Mm,
Um, and so I would say, when if a child expresses an interest
mm,
with their parents and they want to hear, and that's great in their teenage years,
mm,
but that's really up to the parents
yeah.
because parents still
Mm.
have,
Response,
the responsibility
authority. Yeah.
to
Mm,
call it, and that's up to the parents. And so, if I have a child who's 16 and says, I want to hear what you say, and mom and dad says, okay, fine.
yeah.
That's a different
Yeah.
story. But
Mm.
mom and dad stays with me in that consultation.
And I don't know whether this happens because it didn't really apply to me because I trained as a psychotherapist and a psychoanalyst. So of course I learnt at the beginning of the training how important it was to not actually work with anyone under age because you have to have all those guidelines in place, etc., etc. So I never worked. I did work with a couple of teenagers, but it was with the parents' permission, and it was because they'd been referred by psychiatrists, etc. But does it come into, classic astrology training that
No.
really you should be over 21? It doesn't.
Well, no, it doesn't. And
Oh,
I remember when I was studying with the faculty, which I very clearly said at the very start
yes,
was the best training,
yes,
that I said that they don't cover this stuff. They were back when I was studying with faculty, maybe they're different now. I don't know.
yeah.
But they were still asking the question, should we engage with children's charts? Should we do it? And now, 25 years later, I'm like, no,
Yeah,
we got to be careful.
yeah.
Um, so I don't know what the stance is at the moment.
Mm,
But I do know that I'm probably the only astrologer that offers safeguarding and child protection in astrology. But that's because I'm a teacher and
mm,
I
yeah.
have to take safeguarding and child protection classes every single year. I have to update my DBS, my
Mm,
criminal records every single year at my cost. I hasten to add,
yes.
it costs about 60, 70 pounds a year, I think it is, to get that updated, and I have to do it at my own cost.
Mm.
And it's these sort of things that I don't think that astrologers are aware of
Uh,
what it means to work
It's also
with the
like
underage, and that's why I keep saying don't do it.
yeah, like professional indemnity, because
Sorry, Penny.
professional indemnity, because I mean, obviously it doesn't hasn't really applied to me here, and because like you, my main market actually is United States, Canada, and Australia. But it's made me wonder when I come back to the UK whether I need to take out some kind of professional um, insurance, against, I don't know what we would call it, malpractice. I got the prediction wrong.
Yeah, well, I think you have to have no, because I'm a teacher, I have
Yes.
the
Mm.
union that I had to pay for. Not
Yes.
very much money, but
Yes. But yes,
but
absolutely.
it does protect me.
Yeah.
If
Mm.
but coming back to the prediction thing, we're not really we're always going to say to clients, I'm not responsible for your decisions.
No.
All I'm doing is I'm telling you to bring an umbrella because it's going to rain. if they don't bring the umbrella, it's not my problem if you get your hair wet.
Yes,
I've warned
yes,
you. I've
yes.
told you this is what's going to happen. And I hear astrologers making a lot of claims sometimes. These political, I know we're not going to talk
Yeah,
about
we're not going to go
politics,
down that path,
but
but
I've seen astrologers make these big old political predictions, make a big fuss about, I predicted this would happen. But I've also seen them get it wrong, and then it magically comes off their website.
yeah,
So I stay out of politics,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
especially on social media because I don't think that's a place to argue about politics.
No,
Um, yeah, I just think
yeah,
that it's not the right
yeah,
way to go
yeah.
about things.
I know.
And I was there in the ESAR at the ESAR conference when I saw, was it 12 international astrologers supposed to be top of their field,
Mhm.
making a really bad political call, all of them.
Mhm.
And I just thought, wow, okay, that's obviously you're going to try to bury that, but it's public. And you 12 just made the whole entire field look terrible. Is that the way we're going to go down? Is that what we really
Yeah,
want to do, or do we want to do something useful? Which is where I'm trying to go down. I'm trying to build a better future by working with children and
yes,
helping other astrologers understand this is how we
yeah,
can change the world in
yes.
growing confident, happy
Mm.
children who grow into successful adults who
Yeah,
are full of compassion. And
yeah.
that's what I want to achieve in my astrological practice. I don't care who wins the next presidential election.
No.
I'm more concerned about the children in front of me.
Mm. Most people that go into politics have huge egos and incredible narcissism. So, I mean, one of the things I would love to see for younger people, for students, for children, is much more emphasis in schools on self-development and personal awareness and understanding a little bit more about psychology, because I think even if they just understood the basic things about how our thinking can get so distorted, it would make such a difference. Just basic cognitive behavioral therapy would just be a few lessons, and it would equip them to sort of think, oh, hang on a minute, I'm dramatizing it, I'm catastrophizing, or I'm seeing it black and white. And these are very basic things that you have to learn about, but don't necessarily come naturally to us. And it would save the doctors' waiting rooms with people suffering from paranoia and anxiety. And that is something that I think would be alongside the astrological understanding for teachers, for children when they're growing up, when they can begin to understand their psychology through their chart, and also to have a better handle on how their psychology works and their thinking. Then maybe we wouldn't have the politics that we don't want to discuss.
And one more thing, and I hope it's okay to raise this,
Yeah,
is
go on.
our children, are bombarded with pornography,
Yes, yes.
and the whole entire relationships, is how we deal with people and how people interact with each other, and we talk about toxic masculinity and all these sort of things,
Mm.
is all tangled. And
Mm.
I just wish we could, teach children about sexuality in a way that isn't just about avoiding pregnancy or about
Yeah,
avoiding, transmitted diseases, but it's about talking about a relationship and about respecting each other. So that's something else I wish that we could address a little bit more. And if you see me in other interviews, I'm also saying to parents, please talk to your children about sex before the age of 13.
oh god,
Don't
yeah.
let them find out about sex from each other because
Mm.
they, unfortunately, and it's catastrophic that they are all exposed to pornography. It doesn't matter what filters you put in.
Mm.
They are going to be exposed to it in some way, in the most
Yeah.
horrific ways
Mm.
imaginable. Please talk to your children about healthy sexuality,
Yeah.
at home, and help them to develop healthy relationships
Mm.
for when they get older. And it's not really about avoidance. teaching them avoidance, but teaching them respect
Awareness
for each other,
and
for
Saturn
themselves,
boundaries,
awareness.
isn't it? You know, and I
Absolutely.
think you raise an incredibly valid and important point because you know, we were lucky. We weren't bombarded with all of this growing up. And I don't know how parents manage with their children around all this stuff that they get on social media. And it's such a huge problem. And I guess at some point, this bubble will burst and we will have to go back and find a better way to do it. But that's a whole nother topic, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. And I got to tell you that parents, because they didn't grow up in social media the way the young people have, they've never known a life without Facebook. But parents don't, and nobody understands really, you know, what's going to happen with children who have grown up
No,
with
no.
social media.
Mm,
When, 20 years ago, when Facebook first came out, well, not quite 20 years ago, but you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
substantially long enough.
Mm,
We were trying to, as a school, to deal with the online bullying. And eventually we had to give up and say, listen, it didn't happen in school. You're not allowed your mobile phones anyway. It's the
mm,
parents' problem. Well,
yeah.
what do parents do? They give their children devices to babysit, and
Mm,
they don't monitor. A lot of parents don't monitor what the children get up to on social media or anywhere else. They're off doing whatever they need to do because they're busy people. Because of, oh, and here we go, talking about poverty as well. We
mm,
convinced ourselves that we're poor, when
mm.
in fact, actually, there's. I read a really great article on poverty thinking, where we think that we're a lot more poor than what we actually are. We don't realize, hey, you're
We
in
do,
good
we do,
health.
yeah. Yeah.
We'll look at what life was like in the 19th century, and
Mm,
then talk about poverty.
mm.
Um, so I guess that's another kettle of fish, though, too.
It certainly is. And there was one thing else that was in my mind, but then we should really start bringing things to a close. But and I can't remember what it was, so I'll let it go. I think it was just continuing on this. It was all about. Actually, it's just going back to what you mentioned about respect, because that is one of the problems that I think social media has, how it's affected us, because basically you've got a whole generation of people who want to be the influencer and the special person. And of course, this is just building a society of narcissism. And it's hard enough dealing with a narcissistic or the narcissistic part of oneself growing up, let alone almost being encouraged to do it. And I think, as you say, we have been creating a minefield, a bomb that will go off in the future of this generation, and it is a big problem. So maybe this is why the astrology can come in and actually underpin all of this with looking at how, if they understand the Saturn cycles, how they can work out and find out for themselves that Saturn can be the best thing that ever happens to us, that we are prevented from doing certain things at certain times, that we are held back, diverted, because it feels as if this generation is, I want, and I want it now, instead of recognizing that actually it has to be the divine timing or Saturn's time or the divine intelligence. And that, when one gets back into that flow of going with the flow of where life is taking you and not this aggressive way of dealing with life, then life actually has a strange way of working itself out.
Yeah, I think you're kind of coming into the idea of entitlement.
Yes.
You have to earn what you want, and sometimes you get what you want, and you realize it's not really what you wanted anyway,
Yeah.
um, or it's well, let me tell you, I've always wanted to see the Taj Mahal, and that did not disappoint.
Right.
But the work I had to do to get to that point in my life where I could afford a trip to India and I could afford to look at this beautiful thing, it
Mm.
felt to me not that I deserved it, but that I worked for it. And that was a
Yes.
different thing than being offered a trip to Disneyland when I was,
Yeah.
15
Yeah.
or 14 or whatever. That's different. Um, I think that if you ever get to a place in your life where you think, yeah, you know, um, I'm entitled to this, then I think you're maybe not living your life very well. You should always feel like I've earned this. I've worked for this.
Yes.
This
Absolutely.
is the Saturn reward. And this is what I was talking about with the Saturn returns. You should feel like it's something that you've worked hard for.
Because it
And yet,
takes you,
always more work to do. Always
yeah,
more work.
always more work to do, but it's the gateway to that golden age, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's ultimately, I think, what a lot of people forget or miss out with Saturn is that actually it really is your friend and it is a gift. It's an amazing gift, all the Saturn transits. And
How
it does,
lucky I am to get to my second Saturn return.
yes,
How can I be upset that I'm getting older?
yeah,
What is that about? I am happy to be the age that I am. I look back on my
you're
life and
lucky.
I'm damn lucky. I'm a meningitis survivor. I don't know if I told you this before.
No,
I had meningitis when I was 9 months old. The doctors told my family to pray for me to die quickly.
oh my God.
They were going to amputate my legs because they said but they said I wouldn't survive the night anyway, so they weren't going to put themselves through the effort. And on my medical records, described as a miracle baby. So I've always lived with this idea that death came for me, and for whatever reason, I don't know if I should thank God or thank the devil that I made it through,
Yeah,
or whatever.
wow.
But
Mm.
I'm grateful for every single day, and I am grateful for that experience. Yes, it traumatized my family. It's something that everyone talks about, but the fact that I made it through makes me grateful. So I
Yeah,
am grateful for the obstacles in my life, and I think that we all should, at the end of this talk, we should all be a little bit grateful for
absolutely.
the obstacles in our life and what we've overcome. And we build our life uh, by recognizing mistakes, yes, and also recognizing our blessings.
Yeah, yeah. I absolutely agree. I think this has been a lovely discussion, Alex. I've thoroughly
A bit
enjoyed
heavy at times.
talking to you and hearing about all your work and your efforts. And I just want to wish you huge success on the path you're on with astrology because I think it is very much needed. And
Thank you.
it certainly opened up my awareness to an area that I wasn't aware of. So I'm grateful for that. And I'm looking forward to actually meeting you in May. Shifts happen too. That'll be exciting.
It
And
will be.
so, just to remind people quickly, shifts happen too. I will put the link in the description box. And also, I will put Alex's website and YouTube channel in the link. Do you
Yes.
want to put this video on your channel as well? Because I can
Yes,
send,
please add me as a
okay,
collaborator. That's a new
okay.
thing
I'll
for
send
anybody who's watching. Make sure you do
I'll
that.
send you a copy and then you can upload as well. And let's see, what else do we want to say? You've got your Australian.
Oh,
Um,
yep. We start next Saturday, the 14th,
oh,
10 a.m. my time. I don't know what time it'll be in Australia.
GMT. Right,
Yeah, GMT. We will work with the time shifts when it comes, which will be the last weekend of March in the UK.
right,
But
right.
this is a specific Australian cohort
Lovely.
because I know that Australians find it very difficult to find a comfortable time zone um,
Yes,
with
yes,
the Americans. So this is for you, my
yes. So
Australian
my
friends.
Australian clients, listen, check out this course. Oh dear. And well, what can I say? But thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And
Thank you so much.
you are so welcome. And remember, as always, what I always say: like, comment, subscribe, share, tell your friends, all of that. Check out Alex's YouTube channel. She has a very interesting collection of videos looking at various biopics and um, sort of actors, comparing it with real life, isn't it? Your series.
Yeah. So
Yes.
like Elton John being played by Taron Egerton in Rocket Man.
Right.
And Penny's going to be on my channel talking about her favorite biopic soon.
Oh, I
So
will. I will. I will. Yes, we'll sort that out, definitely.
we will.
Okay, so I'm just going to do the technical bit here. Let's see. So I'll press that. And I'm going to say thank you, Alex. This was just
Thank you.
awesome. Bless you. And thanks everybody
Bless you.
for joining us. And we'll see you all soon. Bye for now. Bye.